Welcome to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif, the sort of phase 2 post-COVID edition. Stay at home if you feel like it. And we're glad to have you joining us today. We have our ever faithful and famous guest on the show, Mayor Jeff Lehman. Mayor, thank you for joining us from home. We appreciate having you on the show. Let's get right into it, though, Mayor Lehman. Obviously, it's been crazy. We haven't had you on the show for several months. And in that time, we're experiencing COVID, and we're experiencing numbers from anywhere like 22% of businesses are maybe not in business anymore. You've had your hands full, Mayor. Tell us, what is the state of the union in Barrie as we see it today, and what is the municipality able to do in partnership with the feds and the province? I've given you a lot to talk about. We've got a short show. Take it away.
Sure. Well, let me give you a few things and then we can chat. I mean, as we sit here today in late June, the City of Barrie is in phase 2. We have done relatively well relative to other cities our size in terms of stopping the spread. So the first thing to say is thank you to everybody who participated in this enormous experiment in civic duty and behavioral change over the last 3 months. We've all had to change virtually every aspect of how we live our lives. We've had to go online. We've had to distance from each other. We've had to suspend relationships and social engagements and hobbies and work and so forth. And it's been worth it. We have reduced the spread to the point now where in our area, we've moved well into phase 2 and we are seeing very low daily case numbers. Our medical officer of health often reminds me that the virus doesn't go away until there's a vaccine. So it's more about learning to live in a world where the virus exists. So we're going to have to continue to do things, and we may have to increase the level of restriction and reduce the level of restriction, so-called pumping the brakes, over the second half of 2020 until a vaccine is ready and we reach the end game of COVID. Obviously, the economic damage from the 3-month shutdown has been substantial. I would say in some sectors, what we are hearing is it's less than feared. In others, it's very, very serious. And I think at the moment, the State of the Union, we're probably at a very important month or two for businesses. You know, we had a lot of them say to us, we might be able to shut down, go into cryo sleep for a couple of months. Longer than that, and we're toast. And a lot of that depends on commercial landlords, because one of the biggest costs you can't get out of, you know, if the federal government is supporting your workforce, which they have done to some extent, or if they're providing credit or liquidity or financial support, which they've done to some extent, your next major cost is your bricks and mortar. And I've heard everything from my landlord hasn't given me an ounce of room to move and I'm now toast, to landlords that have been incredibly understanding and supportive. I would say in terms of the economy, literally in the last 24 hours, we launched at Barrie City Council the Economic Recovery Plan. That was built with consultation. We had 6 sectors of the economy and, of course, an economic task force from the beginning of the crisis. We formed that on day 3 in mid-March. And that consists of the heads of all of our industry associations in Barrie, Barrie Construction Association, the Chamber of Commerce, Tourism Barrie, Downtown Barrie, and others. And we use that group to try and coordinate the response and then the planning for recovery initiatives. The reality of the municipality, a little more State of the Union, we're down about $20 million in revenue. That's the forecast to be the hit from COVID. So we know that the municipalities, towns and cities across the country are not the ones with a pile of capital. In fact, we have our own financial challenges similar to many of these businesses. So, you know, our support is much more around what can we organize locally to help our business community come back. For me, that's about 3 C's: capital, confidence, and capacity. The capital is largely going to come from the financial sector and the federal government. The capacity and the confidence you can build a little bit more locally. Capacity is everything from the Patios Everywhere program, which literally creates outdoor capacity for businesses to distance. And we're looking through the recovery plan at actually allowing some businesses to operate in parks and public spaces to take that principle and go further. Just allow public space to be temporarily used for commerce to create distancing. Another great example of that is the Barrie Farmers Market, which is now back in business. But capacity is more than that. It's online capacity. and its confidence. And the confidence comes from trying to put those protective measures in place so that customers can feel safe doing business again, walking into a store or participating in an organized activity or whatever that might be. We can't solve all these problems, but we can be part of it. And I think our plan, which has about 40 specific actions, is intended to try and assist with that. And we've had tremendous help with that. And that's maybe the last thing I should say. We've had tremendous help with that from the partner organizations. So if I can say something about the collaboration in this town, a lot of the infrastructure, by which I mean the relationships, the working relationships that were built between the Sandbox, the Chamber, the Henry Bernick Center, Georgian College, and the City of Barrie, those four as sort of public sector or at least quasi-public support organizations to the industry associations themselves. That interrelationship has created a framework and an infrastructure for us to help build a recovery. Again, we can't be all things to all people, and I'm sure there are areas where we will not yet get it right, but there have been some really positive steps already taken. I mean, without going into all of them, I would say they really surround trying to create those 3 C's or expand the availability of those sort of 3 critical components to recovery.
So, Mayor Lehman, I got to tell you, if I ever need someone to come in and fill, you got the job. That was awesome. Thank you very much. But I mean, you've taken really the bulk of this segment really to give us a real good look. I mean, it's been a hard 3 months. So many different moving parts. I want to go to break so that we have as much time in the second and third segment to really dive deep into some of those elements. As you know, we're a show about hitting home and the real estate and the financial markets, et cetera. But everything that you're talking about really leads up to that capacity, that confidence, and that collaboration that homeowners as well as business owners have working with us, living with us right here in the Barrie and Simcoe area, so Simcoe County area. So we're going to go to break real quick. When we come back, Mike, I'm going to let you open your mouth for the first time on the show today. But thank you very much, Mayor Jeff Lehman, Mayor of Barrie. Thanks for joining us on the show. We'll be right back on Rogers TV Barrie.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Avenues such as studio tours or art shows, it's a way for the public to access us. I get my inspiration from the wood itself, because when I started this 30 some odd years ago, there was no reference material for me to get at. I have to read the wood. I have to analyze how it grew. There's a great art scene in Simcoe County. It just needs to be explored. And it's nice to connect with people.
Ontario is on the reopening path, and Rogers TV is pleased to announce that TV Bingo is back starting Tuesday, July 7th. Grab your cards and tune in at the regular time for the ball drop.
Welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif. And this week we're thrilled to have Mayor Jeff Lehman, Mayor of Barrie. Mayor Lehman, thanks for joining us. You in the first segment gave us a really thorough State of the Union, an idea of obviously the compassion and the empathy for obviously where the business community is, as well as our residents, as well as, truly we should mention, obviously city employees have had to take a bit on the chin as well and during this time. But now it's about working with partners in the community and partners in industry to really help rebound the economy and develop what does reality 2.0 look like. And I'm thankful for that. Our show, as you know, though, is about land use planning, about real estate, about finance, et cetera. So let's get into some of that. And I know at council, you are dealing with a brand new proposal, for example, from Smart Centers. Mike, I know you had some questions on that. Why don't you get into that with us?
Well, smart centers, because it's fresh in everybody's mind if they've been watching council. It's been recently talked about, and it is on a scale that we haven't seen here for Barrie for residential development, multi-residential. But last time we had you on the show, Mr. Mayor, we did talk about some of the proposals that were coming forward. So I'll start it out with the question: has COVID changed some of the plans of some of the developers going forward, or are we still on track to see some of the developments coming forward that have been in the news, have been talked about?
Yeah. So one of the things I did about a month into the pandemic was to call all of the major developers and investors that had a proposal somewhere in the queue to see what the status of their project was, just to say that their investment was important and we wanted to know how they were doing and understand what the climate was. To my amazement, not one said that they were even slowing down. The only thing I heard on a slowdown side at all was that in the first month that there had been such turmoil in the financial markets, there was a little bit of freezing up of credit, and some of them had to provide a pile of additional documentation. But then that seemed to loosen up even after 4 to 6 weeks because the provincial government allowed construction to proceed. So as far as I am concerned, all of my conversations with the development community, the senior investors or otherwise, even some of the financiers, is that everything is a go. And everything, of course, right now for Barrie is enormous. Smart Center is probably the largest of them, but there are more than 20 high-rise towers proposed within the central core of the city of Barrie at the moment, and one that is moving into construction in the next month.
So there's one that's shovel ready at the moment. Sorry, go ahead. I said there's one that's at least one that's shovel ready in the downtown. Which one would that be? I'm curious.
Yeah, that's the Lack House. So they've already done a little bit of work on their site and are about ready to get started on construction. Now there's a whole series of projects across the downtown, of course, that are already at some stage of approval. The ones that are ready to go are only a few, though. Our largest developments are in the approval process, and of course, Smart Centers is one. HIP on the Barrie Central lands is the second one, and then the third is the development on the theater block between Maple and Mary on Dunlop.
So I think it's fair that,
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's fair to say that over your last 2 terms, and you're now into your 3rd term of council, obviously this has been something that you've been really advocating for, obviously in conjunction with Places to Grow, which I think has a new name. But bottom line is we've been trying to get some density into the downtown core so that it doesn't, so the sidewalks don't roll up after 5 o'clock and people who say it's just nightclubs or just this, so that we get that good, healthy mix. Obviously, people are looking for grocery stores downtown. They want a reason to live and participate downtown. So I think it's great that you've got 20 applications that you're looking at. One of the things, though, that I've noticed over the last couple of years is that those who operate larger big box centers or shopping malls have been saying, we see a shift in the way our future will be, and more along a mix of residential over the retail storefront. And are we still on track to see that?
Yeah, well, Smart Centers is probably the obvious example. So that Smart Centers is a REIT shifting very quickly into a very substantial high-rise residential development. And I don't think anyone would be surprised to hear them say that perhaps the demand for big box retail going forward is going to be heavily impacted by online shopping, and COVID has only made that happen faster.
For sure. Now, do you think one of the challenges for City Council always with these development proposals is finding that ground where the existing residents are happy with the plan and the developers can work with those demands? Do you think there's a middle ground for this Smart Center Greenland project that can be reached?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mike. I mean, the site, the Smart Center site is probably, in my opinion, maybe the single best site for density in the whole of the city. The reason for that is Bradford Street has all kinds of capacity from a vehicular point of view. It's not Mapleview or Bayfield or even Dunlop. The Bradford Street frontage could really use it. I mean, anybody driving Bradford Street right now will know it is badly in need of redevelopment. There's vacant sites. There's, a lot of opportunity there. And, to be frank, if you put a whole bunch of density on that spot on Bradford Street, you're not blocking anyone's views of the waterfront. The key piece there is the interaction with the condos on the waterfront side of the development. So along Lakeshore, you've got 4 buildings already, and this is in the gap between them. The design and the impact on those buildings is the key design consideration. And Smart Centers is going to need to make a few changes to the lakefront side of their proposal to address their impact on the neighborhood residents and also the impact on the public space in the waterfront. Let's not forget, 4 very tall buildings are going to cast a heck of a lot of shadow, and it is a very heavily used public waterfront where people value the sunshine. So, we have to be a little careful with the design of those sorts of things, such that the development doesn't end up impacting our waterfront to such a degree that we lose one of the jewels of our city. But I mean, the scale of their investment is larger than all of the investment along the lakeshore combined in the past. Wow. So I think what we are talking about here is a degree of confidence in the Barrie market that we haven't seen before.
So I've just got, just before we head to break, real quick question though, because I think if we were to leave that, we'd leave our audience hanging with a very daunting question of, does council and staff have the tools in place to ensure, and please touch on shadow studies, that we don't have that, have these buildings ruin the experience for those who are enjoying the waterfront?
Yeah, of course we do. We do have the planning controls to be able to do that. But I think one of the challenges always in exercising them is you want to encourage investment and balance that with the need to require design considerations that respect the environment that the buildings are going into. So it's always, as you know, a balancing act. With this one, because the scale is so much greater, it's going to be that much more important. But again, the relationship to the waterfront, the density here is back by Bradford Street, the highest density. There's a big building proposed for Lakeshore, but the design of that one building and its podium will be the most important design consideration, I think, for the whole of the development.
Well, perfect. I think we're going to look forward to seeing how that rolls out over the next few months. And obviously, people will be paying attention. It doesn't matter what ward you live in the city, you're going to be watching and protecting your waterfront as a resident, I'm sure. We got to go to break. When we come back, we want to touch on some land use planning. Want to but share with some thoughts with you of what Ray Duhamel, one of our most foremost planners in the city, has shared with us in terms of his forecast for development in the annexation lands. And so we're going to put you on the spot on what your thoughts are going forward over the next few years. Stick with us on Rogers TV Barrie. We'll be right back after this break.
What kind of show do you want to see on Rogers TV? What interests you? Log on to rogerstv.com, fill out a show proposal, and tell us about your segment idea. We want to know what you want to see. Rogers TV, only on Rogers.
Heading fell. Whoa, I'm not driving. I'm way too stoned. How are you feeling, Veer?
Since we had that talk, I'm not driving tonight at all.
What about you, Dave?
You only had a couple of drinks.
And only a couple of puffs.
I don't drink and drive. No way I'm getting behind the wheel when I smoked weed, too.
How are we getting home, then?
You can drive, Dave.
Come on, Dave.
Take one for the team, buddy.
Don't let weed and alcohol influence your decision to drive.
Yeah, I need a ride.
Were you in Mexico when Noah Bracken died?
You know I was.
I'm not done being taken care of.
After all that, he played God.
We're doing the transplant tonight.
The pod keeps us in stasis by regenerating our cells at the same rate they degrade. Max's heart is never beating again. Are you telekinetically resetting his heart?
Roswell, New Mexico. Stream the latest season anytime on Showcase On Demand or the Global TV app.
After involving Noha in this program, she feels very confident. Here you have a lot of opportunity.
I learned a lot of stuff, like being kind and I'm more open-minded.
Welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif. Mayor Jeff, we've been talking about different proposals coming forward, but before I took us to break, we had recently on our show Ray Duhamel from Jones Consulting. As you know, he's a planner. He speaks often in front of council. He's got a good finger on the pulse of what's going on. And one of the questions that came up is, are we going to see much change in terms of land use or future development? And his thoughts in a nutshell were really this. As we are proving because of COVID that we can telecommute or we can work from home, we may not see necessarily the footprint of residential housing and accommodations change, but we may see the layout change. So more, 1 bedroom plus office or 3 bedrooms plus office or whatever it may be. His concern was, though, that it may be harder to build out and fill the commercial space or the industrial space, certainly in the secondary plan lands. What are your thoughts? What are you seeing? What are you hearing?
Well, I think on the residential side, overall, cities like Barrie will probably end up strengthening in terms of the demand because of COVID. If there is an impact on people's buying choices around communities and built form due to COVID, it's probably going to be to strengthen the market for lower density and strengthen the market for smaller cities and medium cities with a quality of life and a lower cost of housing. So I actually think overall it's going to be very positive on that part of the market. For industrial and commercial, it's a great question. I do think commercial space is going to take a hit. There's no question. I think some businesses are going to struggle, but that's the sort of recessionary impact that's cyclical. The structural piece is the shift to online shopping. I think we are going to see a shift in the retail landscape, and that could mean less demand for commercial big box. Industrial right now is holding up really strong, and I think in Barrie we were just seeing industrial rents start to rise because of the strength of demand for industrial space in Barrie. Hopefully that will actually continue because that's obviously a value-added part of our economy that we want to continue to grow.
Right. If I can take us in a different direction here for a moment and kind of tie it in with what you said about online shopping is going to be a major influence on our big box and our mom and pop shop stores. Dunlop Street for the last 2 years, a better part of it has been, various parts of it have been closed down for construction. So we've kind of proven to ourselves that the traffic can still flow and flow well in the downtown core without Dunlop Street, which leads me to want to ask, is it worth revisiting? And I think you may have mentioned that this was something that was touched on recently in council, turning it into a walkable, close down the downtown just to pedestrian only. Maybe you can touch on that for a moment.
Sure. Well, I know it feels like 2 years, but it's actually only been 9 months. Construction started in August of 2019. I know a lot of people downtown think it's been going forever too. It's only been 9 months, and we've actually hurried up the project because of COVID. Our contractor came to us and said, let's try and get as much of this done during the shutdown that we can, and they made tremendous progress. So I think on the pedestrianization issue, it's been really interesting. Lots of support for that in the community, vocal support. The merchants are not as clearly in favor. In fact, half are opposed, and some very significant ones in the stretch that we were proposing to pedestrianize from Mulcaster to 5 Points. We're saying, please don't do this. It will be the last nail in our coffin.
And yet it's been so successful in some communities.
Well, it's such a mix though, Mike. I mean, Spark Street in Ottawa is the only street downtown with major retail vacancies in the storefronts. And the challenge with pedestrianization in Canada is it's great for 4 months of the year. It's okay for another 2 or 3, and it's a disaster for the other 6. And that's why we did the design that we did. The larger sidewalks with the movable bollards allow us to have a wide pedestrianized realm for all of the summer with the big patios and the big sidewalks, and it's a much more human environment, less machine space, more people space. But then you can move those bollards in to create the additional convenient parking, which helps to encourage customers for the Christmas rush and through the winter. The merchants ultimately decided, although we still haven't had a clear resolution from the BIA board, but the interest seems to be in pedestrianizing on weekends and working with organizations like the Farmers Market to try and help push people into and through the downtown. This is high stakes, though. It's important that we get this right because there are many businesses down here that have really suffered during COVID.
I want to grab. We've just got another couple of seconds, and we're probably going to need you back sooner than you thought. But why don't you touch on the City of Barrie's relationship with Digital Main Street and Google, and how that may or may not help or supplement?
So in 30 seconds or less, we are trying to help small businesses in our community, downtown or elsewhere, get online and do more business online. We have this incredible partnership now through the Digital Main Street program, which includes Google, Microsoft, and MasterCard. And this is a national initiative.
Don't rush, keep going.
Yeah, it's the opportunity really there to build the bandwidth and online capacity for sales, and we're targeting especially those small businesses and independently owned businesses who can't rely on their broader organization to create that capacity. It really has to come from the grassroots. So that was something that we actually started ramping up in the early days of the pandemic, and now with the partnership with those two much larger organizations, obviously, there's the capacity to build this for many of our local businesses.
Is this totally new, or has this been tried in other municipalities?
Yeah, no. The Google, Microsoft, MasterCard partnership is national, and you sign up for it as a local community, and then partner using your business support organizations. There's also a tremendous initiative out of Kitchener-Waterloo, which was actually built on their local platform, Shopify Ready, and it is they won a competition that the Burnick Center held among 11 platforms to create a local market. So what we've got additional capacity to help businesses get online on their own sites, and then there's going to be an online local marketplace that businesses can participate in as well. So those digital initiatives are really designed at that capacity building piece that I talked about earlier.
So, Mayor, we're about to leave the show for this day, but give me three quick things that you think the audience or residents should be keeping an eye on for the next 6 months. What are the three things you're focused on?
Yeah, so remember, we're going to have to live with the virus. We can't assume we've defeated it and it's gone. It's not. It is likely to stay around, and we are going to have to keep following at least some degree of changes to our behavior, and our success in that, our ability to stay open, is going to depend on us continuing to do that. So that's message one. Message two, our economy is doing pretty well, managing through the difficulties, but it's going to be, we are going to lose businesses. We have lost a few already, and there are many people out there that need some help. So look out for one another. Please continue to support our organizations in Barrie that support the less fortunate, and organizations like the food bank and so forth. And then the third thing I would say is really look for trusted sources of information right now. There's so much bad information out there, from outright fake news to conspiracy theories. Please, please, please do not get your information about COVID-19 or the economy from Facebook. Please get it from trusted sources. And a little critical reading will go a long way in helping us all work together to be successful in the recovery.
And we are out of here. Mayor Lehman, joining us. We appreciate it. See you again on Hitting Home with Mike and Arif.
Thanks, folks.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
It was our 35th anniversary. To celebrate, we were on our way to Mama Rosie's, where we had our first date. That's when we heard coming from the radio. So we stopped and listened. It helped us get to safety. So when I think of our anniversary, because now we have even more to celebrate.
Do you have something to share? Let everyone know about your next meeting, your need for volunteers, or your fundraising